We're going to talk about Avatar, The Way of Water, not The Way of the Water, and the absolute bonkers budget behind this movie. So the first question I have is, who's making the deals? Like, I'm picturing like what just happened with FTX. I'm thinking like, who are the people that are just betting big on $2 billion to make anything work? But basically, James Cameron said that this movie has to make back $2 billion just to hit the profitable margin.
Yeah.
Now, my question is, the budget listed on IMDb is $250 million, which can't be right, because is the idea here that it has to make $2 billion when all the sequels are done? Because he's also said that if nobody watches this one, they're not going to make 4 and 5.
Nobody go to the theater. Nobody go see this movie. We can't have 4 and 5 of these. This is ridiculous.
It's already happening.
So-
The plan has been set in motion. There's no stopping
yeah,
it.
but at that,
filmed
he just said they're stopping it. If no one goes to see this movie,
because they
won't
filmed
make
2
it.
and 3 back to back. So 2 and 3 are being
Right.
filmed at the same time. So I know that this movie has a fan base. I've seen a bunch of YouTubers push back on this and say, like, I don't know where the fan base is for this. And every time that happens, they get
the
mega
audience is,
pushback.
like,
So it's got a fan
really
base.
into
Does
it.
it have $2 billion worth of fan base? That remains to be seen.
I think because it was such a cultural moment to go see this in theaters, and everyone had to go see it in 3D and IMAX, and they went with friends and family. It's just cemented so much in our memory that people think that they were a big fan of it. But if you revisited it and watched it again, you'd realize it doesn't have a substantive plot. To
They
the
talk
extent that it
about-
does, it's just hippie tree hugging bullshit, as one Fox executive called it. So I don't know if, like, revisiting it, aside from nostalgia, people will find that it's actually as strong as they remember.
Here's the things working against it. 3 hours and 10-minute runtime. That, on one hand, that makes somebody like me like, no. But
192 minutes,
But beyond
guys.
that, when you make a movie that long, you literally limit the amount of showings you can put in a theater per day. And when the original Avatar came out, it was the gimmick of 3D, when 3D was new, that sold people on going back to the movie. Because movies like this don't get to that level of profitability unless people go again. Right? When these movies make that much money, it's because if people have chosen that they don't want to just go see it one time, they want to see it a second or third time. But that novelty, like, you don't really hear much about 3D anymore. It's
Well,
more
the
of a
novelty
gimmick.
of the technology they used with, I don't know the term for it, but they put these points on the actors to add the CGI in later so that it looked real. Yeah. Like, that novelty of the technology they used to make the movie was more attractive to people than just, the plot itself. And now I feel like watching the trailer for the sequel, I'm just watching, like, something you'd see in the background of a nail salon. Like, it's just calming water noises and
the new trailer
ambient
has more action,
music and very little dialogue, very little about the plot is included in the trailer.
That worries me too, because they said in another part of these articles that says, like, they're going to be more focused on characters and relationships in this one, and it remains to be seen if this movie can pull that theme off when it didn't have to do it the first time around because it focused on the technology.
I know I pitched this a long time ago, but my theory is that James Cameron doesn't really have a plot for this movie, because a long time ago he was like, plan to take a bathroom break, it's going to be so long. I fundamentally think he needs you to leave the theater and then come back in and be like, oh, I guess I missed something, because it doesn't make any sense.
You have to go back.
Not
and
a
see it
theory,
again.
that's a fact.
That's why it can't be a fact until we've seen it. I mean, I've got to get proof, but, like, I think that, like, this idea is like, it's going to focus on relationship and we can't figure out the plot from the trailer because we don't know what it is. We have no idea. We spent a ton of money on special effects. We forgot to hire writers. James Cameron said it would work. Like, it just seems like a mess to me. I remember it being fun to go to the theater and see Avatar. Like, I didn't like the movie, but it was like the thing.
But that novelty is not
it's
there
over
anymore.
And so there's no plot. It's over budget, and we're supposed to just expect that whether you like it or not, they'll produce 2 more. Like,
I want to read the
I
quote.
don't understand the system.
I want to read the quote because I do have questions about whether he means that this movie needs to make $2 billion or if all of them need to make $2 billion. He says
each.
He says you have to be the 3rd or 4th highest grossing film in history. That's your threshold. That's your break even. And he's talking about the actual.
That's a singular film.
That's a singular film to make that. So is he talking about that? Because the budget listed on IMDb is $250 million. they built a whole new camera from scratch to make this movie called the Venice. Wow. So I don't know if that wouldn't go into the marketing budget. That would go into the film budget. And
also, when asked how expensive it was to make this movie, he said, very effing.
Yes.
I can't say that completely. And then he called it the worst business case in movie history. He's out here just saying the wildest shit about it in GQ.
It's so annoying. It's
like,
so
he has such a crass way of speaking, and at the same time, this sense of entitlement because he is known for like big blockbuster movies that people didn't think would perform as well, like Titanic or Terminator 2. They performed really well, but he was criticized at the time for having such a big budget on those.
Here's the thing. This is his first sequel, as far as I know, since Terminator 2. He did the sequel to Alien, but the original wasn't made by him. The original one was made by Ridley Scott. So he hasn't done a sequel. He's produced sequels of his previous, like he's done all the Terminator sequels as a producer, I believe, but he didn't direct any of them. So he doesn't have that track record right now. I don't even like what was the last movie that he made, because he was a producer on Terminator Dark Fate bombed.
I should know this.
But so $250 million budget, I don't buy that. Especially with COVID-19 restrictions that would have doubled that budget because they were filming right in the heart of COVID. I bet you it was closer to $500 million, all in with marketing, because this is one of the ones that will be on the high end of the marketing budget for sure. You're already like, when I looked up the movie, when I started like organizing the structure of the show today, my phone started going off like with like IMDb sending me stuff for
so
Avatar.
with you.
It's sending me stuff for like Avatar. So you're already getting the push notification marketing for it. And here's the other thing. Filming 2 and 3 back to back. I was like, I was wondering like, what was the last time that worked? Was maybe the Matrix sequels were filmed back to back, but those piggybacked right off of the success of the first one right after it came out. They didn't wait 13 years.
And this
to release
Avatar
it.
sequel has missed deadlines that it was supposed to be done by.
Yeah.
Didn't they only start it in like 2013?
Yeah.
Well,
So it was
after
already
the
well
success
after.
of the first one. I don't know why they waited so long, but he's definitely coming off as overly defensive about it and about the huge budget. He said he was defensive about it because it was always the first thing anybody would mention. And now I'm like, if I can make a business case to spend $1 billion on a movie, I will effing do it. Do you want to know why? Because we don't put it all on a pile and light it on fire. We give it to people. So he genuinely thinks that this will pay off in the end. People will flock to this product. He is very confident.
I wish that he was actually making like a business, like a trickle-down economic argument. He's like, look, we need a lot of money because then we can pay a lot of people to have incomes. Like, he's making a weird, like, pro-jobs argument. I know he's not, but, like, that would be cooler.
That was a Walt Disney quote. He says, we don't make movies to make money. We make money so that we can make more movies. That was an actual quote from Walt Disney. So I was looking at an article about what were sequels that outdid the original box office wise. And just at the end of the right before it live, I'm like, what are the examples of that? Because I can think of a couple off the top of my head.
Is it Tokyo Drift?
Blade Runner 2049. That's because the original Blade Runner was.
There's a huge gap in between the original and the sequel. That doesn't really count.
But the original one's a cult classic, not necessarily one that was financially box office successful. Captain America: Winter Soldier. That's part of Marvel. I don't even necessarily count that because it's part of Marvel and the machine. Twilight made more money. The second one, but again, that's part of a trilogy or a trilogy of books, right?
Yeah, and the original was more of an indie film that they didn't expect to make as much money as it did.
Lethal Weapon 2 made more money. 22 Jump Street. I don't think I ever saw 22.
I've seen 22 Jump Street.
I saw 21.
I think I saw 22 before I saw 21.
The Bourne Supremacy, Shrek 2, Rambo: First Blood, The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight's an interesting one because that a lot of people remember Batman Begins doing better than it did because there was no. The industry, people had no faith in Batman after Joel Schumacher did all the damage he did during the latter half of the Val Kilmer and the George Clooney one. So Christopher Nolan had to like rebuild people's faith in the character and the franchise. He's not working from that same position here. He's got all of the good publicity. It's just really old publicity for the old Avatar movie. And I just, I know there have been comics since then, but I just can't imagine, like, who is the guy? Who is the dude in the studio? Like, I'm picturing some, like, coke snorting studio executive who like loves to also bet on crypto and Wall Street, right? And he's just like, yeah, we'll put up $2 billion into Avatar. It's only been a decade.
What studio is behind this?
It's Disney now, but originally it was 20th Century Fox Studios, but Disney bought.
Yeah, so I want to talk about this conversation he recalled with the head of Fox at the time that he was pitching it initially. He was talking to Peter Chernin, the head of Fox, and he was hesitant to go all in on the film because he said, firstly, is there any way you can get the kind of tree-hugging hippie bullshit out of it, quote unquote? And then James Cameron replied, so Peter, I'm at a point now in my career and in my life where I can pretty much make any movie I want. And I chose to make this story because of the tree-hugging hippie bullshit. And then
it's insufferable.
They asked Peter Chernin about this exchange, and he said, I don't remember the tree-hugging hippie bullshit part. I may have said that, but that's not it at all. He said that it was actually the length of the movie and the huge budget that he thought was way too high. He wasn't confident enough in it to...
He's like, there's no plot here and I can see through this.
Yeah, and then James Cameron starts bluffing right after that, and he's like, well, I can just run over to Disney right now after this meeting, and they'll buy it up right after you say no, so you can take it or leave it.
When was this conversation?
I think this is when he was pitching the original.
Okay, well, Disney doesn't have that type of capital right now.
No. This was when he was pitching the original Avatar. And then now he's bringing this story up again to say that it's the same case with the sequel. I don't think it's analogous exactly. But he's saying, I was proven right once and I'll be proven right all over again.
Imagine gloating about something like this where it's not your money you're betting, it's the studio's money you're betting.
So here's this other exchange that he recalled with an unnamed executive at Fox. He said he approached him with a cancer diagnosis expression after a pre-release screening of the film Avatar: Way of Water and begged the director to shorten it. And then James Cameron said, something I've never said to anybody else in the business. I think this movie is going to make all the effing money. And when it does, it's going to be too late for you to love the film. It's time for you to love the movie today. So I'm not asking you to say something that you don't feel, but just know that I will always know that no matter how complimentary you are about the movie in the future, when it makes all the money, and that's exactly what I said in caps, all the money, not some of the money, all the effing money. I said, you can't come back to me and compliment the film or chum along and say, look what we did together. You won't be able to do that. At that point, that particular studio executive flipped out and went bug shit on me, and I told him to get the F out of my office, and that's where it was left.
I feel like he is just so clearly like a completely arrogant person who thinks
and insecure.
That like, yeah, deeply insecure. People who are often extremely arrogant are really insecure, and like it's interesting because it's like he thinks everything he does is completely right no matter what, and he's willing to die on that hill and manipulate the situation, like going to the media first, the story, because he can't get past his own narcissism. Like, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine a world where like you can just like, I mean, I understand that like when you become a studio executive, you understand that you're working with creatives and that's a different environment than working with tech people. Than every job where you have a studio executive or not a studio, but at the executive level provides you with different roadblocks and different things that you have to overcome with the people that work under you, and to work with egomaniacal people like that, like, and then your director has to work with egomaniacal actors. They all have the people that work under them that create unique problems for them to solve for all of it. But I just can't imagine having that conversation and then being like, we're betting $2 billion on this dude. But also,
he's unstable, but he's creative and eccentric.
They love, and there's still the trope that's a thing. But what I found lately is that the creative eccentric that makes the $2 billion movie may be there, or the $1 billion movie may exist, but more often than not, it's the homogenous studio project that makes the $1 billion or the $2 billion money.
Well, then Avengers Endgame outperformed Avatar as the highest grossing film, right?
No, Avatar is still the highest grossing film with multiple multiple re-releases. With multiple re-releases on the film.
Maybe they meant just the initial box office.
And I also remember they did the same thing with Avengers Endgame, where they re-released it, hoping to cross Avatar, and then it didn't. And then I vaguely remember Feige being kind of bitter about that.
But
that they didn't
James Cameron is very full of himself about the fact that this is his brainchild and it's not part of this cinematic universe. It's just his own, and it's his own universe.
That he's using their money to make.
And he was also bragging about how he has this streaming service that's just in his own head when he goes to sleep at night. And
still Avatar.
This idea for the plot of the Avatar sequel came to him in the night in a dream.
Do you think
he's just such a creative genius?
Do you think he should have listened to the studio execs?
I mean, who knows? We'll find out.
It's just a lot of money to bet.
I feel like it might actually perform better than expected.
I'm sure it's going to make money. I'm sure it will at least.
Is it going to make $2 billion?
Is it going to make $2 billion?
It's a lot.
Maybe both of them make $2 billion.
But it's been long enough between the first one and now that people forgot what they thought of the first one. Other than that, it was cool blue people.
Also,
I think that there's been enough at first people were like, oh, so unusual, 3D, whatever. And since then people are like, that movie where nothing happens and it's blue. I actually think modern sentiment surrounding this movie is relatively negative.
I don't think
people
so.
Don't. I never hear of anyone being like, you know what we should rewatch? Avatar. I've never heard of that in my life. I do hear it for some of the Marvel movies and different stuff like that.
I try to always put myself in the perspective that there's whole cultures, subcultures of people that like stuff that I don't like. And I do believe that I've seen enough pushback in the comment sections of people who tend to make videos that are right in line with their audiences, where that pushback was unbeknownst to them too. So
I think people fondly remember it, but not because of the actual quality of the film or the plot or the characters that they got invested in. I don't think any of them could recall the names of the characters that were in that movie or the protagonist.
December 16th.
Yep. See, and that was one of the other things. Wasn't it a summer release last time?
Yeah, but holiday releases are kind of sacred.
I get holiday releases, but what I remember was
when does Christmas break start? It's
also when all of the young teens and young adults are free from school, so they can go to the theater multiple times with their friends to see the special effects. The special effects, I feel like, again, this is totally anecdotal. I'm not an industry expert, but I think the summer release helped the movie in a way that having a limited holiday release, meaning people have free time for a limited amount of time.
December 16th is a Friday, might be the start of Christmas break for kids.
Oh, yeah. I hope they don't put any other hair sex scenes in there that's inappropriate for kids.
I bet they have more of them, to be honest.
That's the age limit.
Just for that cheap shock value. I also remember that the original Avatar was in theaters at the same time as M. Night Shyamalan's famously bad Avatar: The Last Airbender movie. It was in theaters at the exact same time. So it was which Avatar did you see?
Who allowed that? Who allowed that?
Horrible decision.
They would never. Or maybe maybe it was actually they did that on purpose. They're nobody's going to go see this movie. Maybe if we put it out at the same time
to sabotage the other.
So what else is getting released alongside this?
There's no other big studio releases until the end of the year. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.